Today, I consider myself.
This is hallowed ground.
There's one. It is deep to right field.
It's what Carnegie Hall is to music.
Holy cow! Holy cow!
Lewis measured him right to the body, a left up to the jaw.
The Pope is now coming down the third baseline.
I'm in the New York state of mind.
It was the cathedral.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Yankee Stadium.
Hello, I'm Greg Cergol. Over the course of the next hour, we're going to relive the stadium's historic moments and personal stories, the drama, glamour, and glory both on and off the field. For while Yankee Stadium is renowned as the home of baseball's greatest franchise, it's also played host to popes, politicians, prize fighters, and performers. And all have left their indelible marks on this grandest of stages.
My dad was an usher here, and in 1949 he took me out to my first game, and I walked out into the upper deck, and it was such a magnificent feeling.
Tony Moranti began working as a Yankee Stadium usher with his dad at 16 and has been here ever since, still mesmerized by the sights and the sounds and the memories.
I could see my father all over the place, so it has pretty special meaning to me.
Moranti is now director of Stadium Tours, the perfect guide for our walk through stadium history.
Back in 1920, the Yankees had purchased Babe Ruth from the Boston Red Sox at a cost of $100,000. I don't know if we would be here today if it weren't for the efforts of the Babe.
August 18th, 1948. There's no simple way of telling Babe Ruth's wake. It was as everything the man did. It was carnival. It was cathedral. It was the people mourning a man they called their own. Leo Swain, New York Post.
It was the only wake ever held at Yankee Stadium. Fitting, because Yankee Stadium had never seen anyone quite like Babe Ruth. Linda Ruth Tussetti is the Babe's granddaughter.
Did he party hard? Yeah, he partied hard. Did he live big? Oh boy, did he live big. My mother said life didn't owe him a minute.
Cancer ended Ruth's legendary life at age 53, and his body was brought to Yankee Stadium to lay in state for 2 days.
We had this almost Talmudic debate with ourselves about should we go and honor a fallen Yankee, because we were Dodger fans.
But then 11-year-old Pete Hamill and his older brother made the trip uptown from Brooklyn, their first visit to Yankee Stadium.
And the crowds were immense. They were 6 or 7 across, wrapped around the stadium into I don't know where. We stood there and said a couple of little prayers and moved on like everybody else. And he looked, his face was very powdery, like he had been sick a long time. The great bulk that we saw in the newspapers and the old photographs had wasted away. It was something that stayed with me all my life, the sight of this exhausted man who had once made thousands roar.
A sports writer named Fred Lieb coined the phrase, and it was no exaggeration. Yankee Stadium was the house that Ruth built.
Have to be agreed upon. Will you kindly sign it? Yes, sir, Colonel.
Babe put the Yankees on the map. Beginning, the end.
In fact, when Babe Ruth joined the team in 1920, the Yankees had no home of their own, sharing Manhattan's Polo Grounds with the New York Giants. But that year, Babe's presence led to record attendance and an angry landlord.
The Yankees were suddenly outdrawing the Giants at the Polo Grounds on the strength of Babe Ruth's popularity. And so the Yankees were sort of told, when your lease expires here, you should find yourself another ballpark.
They were being thrown out of the Polo Grounds, so what do? They wind up building a bigger and better stadium.
Built on an old lumber yard for $2.5 million, Yankee Stadium was completed in just 284 days. 2,300 tons of steel, reinforced concrete from a company owned by Thomas Edison, and of course that distinctive facade, a stadium the likes of which no one had ever seen before.
It was the first triple-decked stadium in America. You know, it's deep and cavernous, and it's awe-inspiring, and that's part of the charm of it.
Yankee Stadium was there on the Harlem River, snubbing its very snooty nose at the Polo Grounds.
April 18th, 1923. It was difficult to get into the aisles to find seats. Mobs scrambled at the Frankfurter stands. It was the largest gathering I've ever seen. Guy Lee, New York Daily News.
They had this enormous opening day crowd of 74,000 with some 20,000 additional being turned away.
Ruth christened the new stadium with the first home run there, and the Yanks beat Boston. Yankee Stadium has never looked back. 99-year-old former Yankee Bill Werber will never forget his first game at the stadium in 1930, and a special lesson from the Bambino himself.
Babe Ruth hit a home run. While I was on base, I took off and went around second in a cloud of dust. I knew Babe had hit the ball in the stands, but I wanted to show these people how I could run. And Babe Ruth came in and sat down beside me and patted me on the head. And he said, son, he said, you don't need to run like that when the Babe hits one.
The last time Ruth visited the stadium in uniform came in 1948, just months before his death. Linda Ruth Tassetti made her first visit to the Babe's monument there 46 years later.
There was a groundskeeper. So I said, can you unlock the gate? I'd like to see the monuments. I want to see my grandfather's. And he says, well, who's your grandfather? So I said, Babe Ruth. He goes, yeah, prove it. So I just went like this. And he said, okay. And he unlocked the gate. I mean, how many people can walk in to this giant stadium and say their grandfather built it?
We had about 90,000 people, and at times you could have heard a pin drop in here. It was so quiet and respectful.
Yes, tour guide Tony Moranti has been a part of Yankee Stadium crowds that were, well, reverent.
And this is what they refer to as the hallowed grounds, actually.
In fact, on many glorious occasions, baseball's cathedral became a religious one, drawing the largest crowds the stadium has ever seen. People of many faiths for whom this place will always hold special meaning. March 10th, 2006, Yankee Stadium hosts a wedding, an intimate affair of 400 to see sports writer Ed Lucas blinded as a child after being hit by a baseball.
With this ring,
I thee
wed.
Say I do to Allison Fifley, who's also blind. The couple had been introduced by Yankee legend Phil Rizzuto.
And Ed, you may kiss the bride.
It was the stadium's first and only wedding.
This is Yankee Stadium, New York. This is an historic hour.
July 1957. In stifling heat, 100,000 jammed the stadium to hear Billy Graham preach his message of redemption.
Your life can be changed. It can be transformed.
Graham called the throng the biggest in stadium history, but that claim would be challenged only a year later.
August 1958. The only scorecard at Yankee Stadium last week was the Bible. New York had never seen a convention so big. Time magazine.
More than 123,000 Jehovah's Witnesses packed Yankee Stadium, one of many visits the witnesses have made to the ballpark.
Mickey Mantle and Yogi Berra would be hard put to recognize their playground.
The witnesses also swept and scrubbed the stadium after each event, and even walked on the field in bare feet to protect the turf.
Nelson Mandela.
June 1990, after 27 years in prison, South African political leader Nelson Mandela calls for an end to apartheid before a sold-out Yankee Stadium. Later, he donned a Yankee jacket and cap and proclaimed, "I am a Yankee."
In and around the stadium, not one incident. I mean, for all the belly aching about crime in the area, not one incident.
Through it all, though, Mandela's host that day had some other worries.
My big concern was, would he fit into bed at Gracie Mansion? Because in my mind, he's 10 feet tall. My wife kept saying, no, he'll fit, and I wasn't sure he would, but he did, and it worked out.
The stadium was transformed again in 1976 for a visit by the controversial Reverend Sun Myung Moon.
The Pope is now coming down the third baseline, headed toward home plate.
In October 1965, another historic day, the first papal visit to Yankee Stadium.
One of the cops said, "I've never seen such an orderly crowd." I said, "They just went to Mass," you know.
Father Dermot Brennan was teaching music at Cardinal Hayes High School that year when he watched Pope Paul VI serve the first papal Mass in the Western Hemisphere. 14 years later, another pope came to Yankee Stadium, and Father Brennan was on hand again with 80,000 others to greet John Paul II.
So we had no idea when he would arrive. And then finally, there was a young fellow, I remember a young red-headed cop standing next to me, and finally he said, "Father, he's here." And it was like an electric charge went through the whole place.
This time, Father Brennan served as director of a 1,400-member choir.
The closing song was "Holy God, We Praise Thy Name," which in New York is almost a church anthem, and the place just rocked. To see 70,000 people, you know, in one place, and it wasn't a ball game.